Hello, church, and welcome back to another Thursday at 3. I'm Pastor Rachel, and it is good to be with you again today. I'm so excited to introduce Dr. Bob Constant and Mary Scott Singer to you. They were delegates with their spouses to the Florida Annual Conference this past June, at the beginning of June. We attended this annual conference virtually, just like we did last year, and they have some highlights, some challenges, some things that were shared that were really encouraging about being a United Methodist and how we move forward through this time together. So I thank you both for being here and being a part of this conversation with me. And we'll start with you, Dr. Constant. Can you tell us about what a strong emphasis was made at the Florida Annual Conference, what the bishop and the cabinet talked a lot about, and what you took away from that emphasis?
Yes, thank you. One of the things that was emphasized strongly at this conference was about developing new paradigms for churches to create and sustain church communities. That's kind of a recognition that churches can't necessarily expect at this point and in the future that they're going to be able to expand church community by having throngs of people show up at the doors of a church, brick and mortar church. And that we really need to be more outward focused in terms of our sense of mission and evangelism in that regard. And, that's an idea that really, I think, has been in practice for a number of years. And I know that at least for the past 10 years, Florida Conference has basically been involved in a program called Fresh Expressions. Fresh Expressions is a movement where the church folks are creating communities of faith outside the brick and mortar church, but in the context of the culture of the people who might be yearning for church, but who, for one reason or another, are not going to go to church. They've either been hurt by church, or they feel like they're marginalized and they don't really belong there, or they may work on Sundays and therefore they don't feel like it's the place for them because they can't go there because of their job. And so these people are creating communities of faith in cafes and exercise clubs and yoga clubs and sewing circles and just a variety of things where people are getting together and developing church communities in those settings. And so the efforts of these programs is missional. That is to say, it's serving people who are currently outside the church. It is contextual in that it's listening to people and entering into their culture and trying to provide the gospel within the context of their own culture. It's educational. It basically is making discipleship a priority. And finally, it's ecclesial. That is to say, it's aimed at the effort of forming new and fresh expressions of church. And that church is one of the things that we hope to develop out of that. The other thing that was expressed in the conference is that the pandemic has had a huge impact on this, in that it's created enormous challenges for the church, which obviously depends on its connections amongst people. And we know that from a lot of research that it's going to take a long time for the church to come back to normal. And even when it comes back to normal, that's going to be a new normal. It's going to be something that's different. It's a big challenge, but as Bob Bouchon once emphasized to me, a former pastor of the church here, in great challenges, there's always great opportunity. And in this particular uh, challenge, one thing that has happened is we've become much, much more adept at dealing with online versus on-site church. We've had to. We really haven't had any choice. And so we've become much more strong in digital community and in social media. And that's something that I think that church leaders really feel like, even as we go forward and even as we meet in church, an online presence, not just streaming church, but doing a lot of discipleship and doing a lot of missional activities online is going to be something that is really the church going forward. And I think this has really gotten strong emphasis from the leadership of Ken Carter, our bishop, but I was really impressed by that particular kind of movement in the church.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. And it was the hybrid church is oftentimes how they would refer to that, right?
Yes, they talked about the hybrid church as a church in the future that will both have a strong on-site presence, but also a strong online presence in terms of service, mission, discipleship, meeting together, etc.
Absolutely. Well, I so appreciate you and Nancy going and being a part of that year after year. And thank you for sharing with us both about Fresh Expressions and about the hybrid church model. And I'm encouraged by that. So thank you, Dr. Bob.
Thank you.
Mary Scott, you and Ivor went, and you were also a part of our delegation to the Florida Annual Conference. Tell us one thing you were really excited about from the Florida Conference.
Well, the conference is always exciting. It's hopeful. We have a wonderful future. We have amazing leadership within the Florida Conference. But there was one particular educational program that I attended, and also a resolution that we approved. And I had read recently, Rachel, that thriving churches, those that are thriving today, are focusing on social justice, which our bishop is now focusing on through anti-racism and through feeding the hungry. And the second is creation care. So we learned from a pastor in Allendale, Reverend Andy Oliver, about what his church was doing. And he presented the resolution to have a solar sanctuary, that if a church is able to have solar panels on their church, he's encouraging it. They have a very small church, Rachel. 1 year, by having solar panels, here's what he does for God's creation. He saves 40 tons of coal, 40 tons of CO2, 2,000 trees a year, and it's the equivalent of driving one car 175,000 miles just by putting panels on their church. But he said they took a dying church that was going to be closed from 40 members to 200 members by focusing on, as I said, social justice and creation care. And he said, the solar issue has become a discipleship effort on his part because people are joining the church. 1 in 2 visitors, now they have an online presence also, 1 in 2 visitors say they're coming because they have a creation care effort in their church. And 12 new families, now this is a 200-member congregation, 12 new families join a year because of their creation care ministry. They're getting known in their community as being a social justice and creation care site. They're known in their community. And it's a wonderful way, I feel, to look at where God is taking us. We are charged to take care of creation. And certainly our country is moving in that direction. The world is. And it's an opportunity for our denomination.
Thank you, Mary Scott. Reverend Andy Oliver is the pastor of Allendale United Methodist Church in St. Petersburg. And actually, both of my sisters, when they lived in St. Pete, were a part of worshiping there and a part of a young adult Bible study discipleship group there. And they said similar things about the impact that the church is making on the community. So I appreciate you sharing about churches that are social justice focused and creation care focused. What God is doing through them. So thank you. I know that there was also much talk about moving through the change, and how, as Dr. Bob said, a great change and challenge awards this opportunity. What was it that you saw at the Florida Annual Conference, Mary Scott, that would challenge us as a church and teach us as we move forward?
And Rachel, I always go back to 2,000 years ago to the first church. And that was a challenge and that was a change. And Jesus asked us to basically step out of our boundaries and do what he commanded, that the kingdom is here as well as in heaven. And what is exciting to me is, and for our church, is for us to look at things through fresh eyes. The pandemic has forced it, but we now need to look that way. We need to look outside of our four walls, our brick and mortar. We have this beautiful site at Reeves campus, which is a phenomenal opportunity. And I think if we just get creative and think of ways to serve in social justice and creation care and the missions that we offer, our church will thrive. The people are waiting to enter, as we've shown from some of these other churches. They have, and we're set to do so in Winter Park.
Thank you both. I know we pray this prayer every Sunday, the Lord's Prayer, that God's kingdom in heaven would be done on earth. And part of the reason why God put the church here is to make that happen and to be the hands and feet of Jesus in bringing the kingdom here. So thank you both, Mary Scott Singer and Dr. Bob Constant, for being a part of our conversation today on Thursday at 3 and telling us about the Florida Annual Conference. I know both of you would be able and willing to share any more details with our congregation, but thank you both for going and being a part of the delegation. Is there anything else you'd like to share before we close out our time?
It's an honor to be a representative of our church. I love our church, and we have so much hope and prospect in the future.
Thank you, Mary Scott. Thank you both for being a part of this conversation. And until we meet again, have a wonderful week. God bless you all.
Thank you.